Jeb Bush made some pretty big news on Iraq, but not exactly the way he might have intended. His first interview in 2 months, his sit-down with Megyn Kelly, and I must say it was a 20-minute unedited interview. And as the former Florida governor talked about immigration and Common Core educational standards and what happened in Baltimore, he's very comfortable in talking about policy. He seemed very relaxed. He's not a guy who speaks in sound bites. He's not flashy. He's a little bit on the low-key side. But I think he demonstrates in these interviews that he knows his stuff. No accident, by the way, that he mentioned that he's had 20 press gaggles and Hillary Clinton, not any. But on Iraq, the thing that made big news was the way in which he didn't quite answer the question the way that Megyn Kelly asked it. Let's take a look.
On the subject of Iraq, obviously very controversial, knowing what we know now, would you have authorized the invasion?
I would have, and so would have Hillary Clinton, just to remind everybody, and so would have almost everybody that was confronted with the intelligence they got.
So this wasn't an ambiguous question. Megyn Kelly, knowing what you know now, what would you have done about Iraq? And Jeb chose to answer the question as if he was back in 2003, faulty intelligence, this is what we knew at the time. Hillary Clinton supported the effort against Saddam at the time, and not in 2015 when we know how it turned out, when we know that Saddam had no weapons of mass destruction, when we know what a quagmire the Iraq war became. Now, as he tries to clean this up, he had one of his surrogates, Ana Navarro, appear on CNN. They had emailed, she said, and Jeb had said he misheard the question. Clearly, the Bush camp knows it has a problem here. But my theory is that it was sort of convenient for him to not hear the question properly. Because had he been forced to say, how do you look back today on your brother's decision to invade Iraq, then he has a very unpalatable choice. Either he can defend his brother as a matter of family loyalty, or he may believe that given the information at the time it was the right decision, and get beat up as he has by a number of pundits who say, given what you know now, how can you possibly defend the decision to send U.S. troops to Iraq and, of course, all the hundreds of thousands of troops that followed. But if he answers the question the other way and says, well, obviously, if I had known in 2003 what we know now, I would not have invaded Iraq, well, then thousands and thousands of stories would have been written about Jeb Bush abandons brother's legacy, Jeb Bush putting space between him and George W. And Jeb knows that. It's part of the baggage of running with the last name Bush, and the third, asking voters to make him the third member of the Bush family to occupy the White House in roughly the last 24 or 25 years. So this Iraq controversy is not going to go away because I think it's become a kind of a shorthand for how Jeb deals with his brother's presidency, and particularly the more negative aspects or controversial aspects of his brother's presidency. He doesn't seem to be running away from George W. He says he considers him one of his top foreign policy advisors. His detractors, his rivals, will certainly use that against him, but whether the voters hold the last name against him or try to tie him to the decision on Iraq or anything else that went wrong during the Bush presidency, including the financial collapse in 2008, that's something that he's going to have to deal with along the way. And by the way, Hillary Clinton, famous last name, husband's presidency, may face much the same challenge.